At the recycling center dropping off boxes. The attendant opened one and asked, "Where did you get medical waste? You're not authorized to transport this." I stared at the box like it had just grown teeth. "What are you talking about?" "That's just stuff my uncle gave me." The attendant, a guy named Roy, with a permanent scowl and a safety vest 2 sizes too big, stepped back and pointed at the contents. "Those are used syringes, medical tubing, and what looks like biohazard bags. This is regulated waste. Can't just dump this here." I look inside the box for the first time since I loaded it into my car. He was right. Needles, tubes, packaging with red biohazard symbols everywhere. My stomach dropped. I didn't know that was in there. My grandma passed away 2 months ago. And my uncle asked me to drop off some boxes from her house. Well, he's out of town. He said it was just old stuff to recycle. I didn't even look inside. Roy crossed his arms, his expression softening slightly. "You can't just throw this stuff away. There are protocols, fines. I need to call someone about this." "Wait, I just take it back. I'll dispose of it properly." "I didn't mean to." "Too late. It's already been flagged in our system." I watched him walk toward the office and panic set in. What if I got fined? What if this turned into some legal nightmare? 10 minutes later, Roy came back. With another man in a supervisor uniform. The supervisor examined the box with latex gloves, pulling items out one by one, his face getting more serious with each discovery. "Where exactly did you get this?" I asked, without looking up. "My grandmother's house on Hillside Drive." "Well, my uncle's been handling the estate. He gave me these boxes last week. And asked me to drop them off here while he's traveling. Said it was just recyclables. And old medical supplies from her diabetes." I didn't question it. The supervisor pulled out one of the syringes with gloved hands, holding it up to the light. "These aren't insulin needles." My heart started pounding. "What do you mean?" He held it closer to my face. "Insulin syringes are smaller inner. These are standard gauge, the kind used for stronger medications. Pain management, things like that." I had no idea what to say. I never paid attention to what my grandma's medical supplies looked like. "I'm going to need you to come inside while we sort this out." I followed them into a small office. Supervisor made a phone call while Roy stood guard. "County Health is sending someone over," the supervisor said. "Why are there pharmacy labels showing controlled substances?" He pointed to the bags. "Fentanyl patches. Morphine vials, grandmother's name. But the dates were from 3 weeks ago." "That's impossible. She died 2 months ago." He pulled out his phone. "According to county records, Lillian Hartwell is still alive." My vision blurred. I showed him the death certificate photo on my phone. He studied it. "This doesn't match our records. Then someone made a mistake or someone faked a death certificate." My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen my grandma's body. It was a closed casket. My uncle handled everything. My uncle. I tried calling him voicemail. I tried his house. No answer. My uncle arranged the funeral. Dennis Hartwell. He's not answering. The supervisor typed into his computer, then turned the screen toward me. A news article from 3 weeks ago showed my uncle's photo. The headline: "Local man wanted for Medicare fraud and prescription forgery." I felt sick, so my grandma might still be alive. The health inspector and 2 officers arrived. I gave them grandma's address. But I haven't been there since the funeral. My uncle has the only key. We drove to her house in separate cars. When we pulled up, the place looked dark and quiet. One officer jimmied the lock since I didn't have a key. The smell hit me immediately when the door opened. Medicinal and septic. The officers cleared rooms. Then I heard a voice. "Who's there?" My grandma's voice. I ran to the back bedroom. There she was sitting in a hospital bed that hadn't been there before. Hooked up to an 4. "Grandma." She looked confused. "Sweetheart. What are you doing here?" An officer checked her for saline and antibiotics. "Someone's been caring for her." My grandma's face crumpled. "Dennis said I couldn't go to the hospital. He said they take my house. He take care of me here." The words hung in the air like shattered glass, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. I knelt beside the hospital bed, my hands trembling as I reached for Grandma's frail fingers. Her skin felt paper-thin, almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent light that one of the officers had switched on. The room smelled of antiseptic and something else, something stale and neglected that made my throat tighten. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice cracking. "How long have you been here like this?" She blinked slowly, her cloudy blue eyes struggling to focus. The confusion in her gaze made my chest ache. This wasn't the sharp, vibrant woman who used to make me chocolate chip pancakes every Sunday morning. This was someone diminished, someone who'd been kept in the dark, literally and figuratively, for reasons I was only beginning to understand. Officer Matthews, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped closer to examine the 4 bag hanging from a makeshift pole. She pulled out her phone and snapped several photos before turning to her partner. "We need paramedics here now. And get a detective on the line." Her partner, a younger officer named Rodriguez, was already on his radio, his voice clipped and professional as he relayed the address and situation. I heard him use words like elder abuse, possible kidnapping, and welfare check, each term adding another layer to the nightmare unfolding around me. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Matthews," the woman said gently, addressing my grandmother. "Can you tell me how you're feeling right now? Are you in any pain?" Grandma's eyes filled with tears that spilled down her weathered cheeks, leaving dark trails through what looked like days of unwashed skin. "My hip hurts. It always hurts. Dennis gives me medicine for it, but..." Her voice trailed off, weak and reedy. "When did you last eat?" Matthews asked, her pen poised over a small notebook. I don't remember. Dennis brings me soup sometimes." "What day is it?" The question pierced through me like a blade. I looked around the room properly for the first time. The curtains were drawn tight, blocking out any natural light. A small digital clock on the nightstand had been unplugged, its blank screen offering no temporal anchor. On a folding table near the bed sat several empty soup cans, a half-drunk bottle of water, and a pill organizer with multiple compartments still full. "It's Thursday, Grandma. Thursday, March 21st. She closed her eyes, fresh tears streaming. "I've been here so long. I can't remember when I last saw the sun." Officer Matthews exchanged a loaded glance with Rodriguez, who'd finished his radio call. The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but my throat felt sealed shut, my mind reeling with the implications of what we'd discovered. The health inspector, a thin man named Dr. Reeves who'd arrived with the officers, approached the bed with a stethoscope. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm going to check your vital signs, all right? Just breathe normally for me." As he worked, I noticed other details that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. The hospital bed was the medical-grade kind, probably worth thousands of dollars. The 4 stand, while makeshift, held professional equipment. A blood pressure cuff hung from a hook on the wall, next to what looked like a pulse oximeter still in its packaging. This wasn't a hastily assembled sickroom, this was a calculated setup. "Blood pressure's low," Dr. Reeves announced, frowning. "Pulse is thready. She's dehydrated, possibly malnourished. We need to get her to a hospital immediately." "No." Grandma's sudden cry startled everyone. She tried to sit up, but her weakened state made the movement more of a struggle. "Dennis said they'll take my house. He said if I go to the hospital, they'll put me in a home and sell everything." This house has been in our family for 40 years. I can't. Mrs. Hartwell, Officer Matthews interrupted gently but firmly, your nephew has been lying to you. No one is going to take your house. You need proper medical care. But Dennis said. Dennis has been committing fraud using your identity, I cut in, unable to hold back any longer. The anger that had been building in my chest finally found its voice. He told everyone you were dead, Grandma. He held a funeral. I was there. We all mourned you. The color drained from her already pale face. What? No, that's. Dennis wouldn't. He's wanted by the police, Officer Matthews added, her voice steady but compassionate. For Medicare fraud and prescription forgery. The medications he's been giving you, we'll need to verify that everything has been appropriate and legally obtained. The sound of the ambulance pulling up outside cut through the conversation. Moments later, 2 paramedics rushed in with a gurney and emergency equipment. They moved with practiced efficiency, asking questions, checking vitals, preparing to transport. I stepped back to give them room, feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. As they worked on stabilizing Grandma for transport, Officer Rodriguez gestured for me to follow him into the hallway. We need to ask you some questions about your uncle. When did you last see him in person? I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly unsteady. Last week. Tuesday, I think. He came to my apartment with the boxes. Said he was traveling for work, would be gone for 10 days. He does pharmaceutical sales, or at least, that's what he always told us. Did he seem nervous? Agitated? No. He seemed normal. Maybe a little rushed, but he said he had a flight to catch. I rubbed my face, exhaustion creeping in at the edges. He's my mom's brother. We've always been close. He helped raise me after my dad left. I can't believe he would. People do desperate things when they're in financial trouble, Rodriguez said, not unkindly. According to the article the supervisor found, your uncle accumulated significant gambling debts. Started forging prescriptions about 8 months ago, then escalated to Medicare fraud. 8 months. I calculated backward. That was right around when Grandma had her hip replacement surgery. When she'd needed round-the-clock care and Uncle Dennis had volunteered to handle everything. We'd all been so grateful. The funeral, I said suddenly, the memory crystallizing. It was closed casket. He said Grandma wanted it that way, that she'd left specific instructions. We never questioned it because. I trailed off, the full horror of the deception settling over me. Because you trusted him, Matthews finished, appearing in the doorway. That's what family does. He exploited that trust. Through the open bedroom door, I could see the paramedics preparing to move Grandma. She looked so small on that gurney, so fragile. One of the EMTs was adjusting the oxygen mask over her face while the other secured the 4-bag to the gurney's pole. Can I ride with her? I asked. Matthews nodded. We'll need a formal statement from you later, but yes. Detective Carver will meet you at the hospital. In the meantime, we're going to process this scene and put out an alert for your uncle's vehicle. You said he was supposed to be traveling? That's what he told me. But now I wonder if anything he said was true. The paramedics wheeled Grandma past us, and I fell into step beside the gurney. She reached out weakly, her fingers finding mine. I'm sorry, she whispered through the oxygen mask. I believed him. I thought I was protecting my home. It's not your fault, Grandma. None of this is your fault. The ambulance ride felt endless and instantaneous all at once. The paramedics kept up a steady stream of communication with the hospital, rattling off numbers and medical terminology I didn't understand. I held Grandma's hand the entire time, watching the monitors that tracked her heartbeat and oxygen levels, praying that we'd found her in time. At the hospital, everything became a blur of activity. Grandma was whisked away to the emergency department while I was directed to a waiting area. A nurse took my information and assured me that a doctor would update me as soon as possible. I sank into an uncomfortable plastic chair and pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls from my mother. 12 text messages. I'd silenced my phone during the ordeal at Grandma's house and forgotten to check it. With shaking fingers, I called her back. She answered on the first ring. "Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "It's about Uncle Dennis." "Mom, I know. I'm at Mercy General Hospital. You need to come here right now." "The hospital? What happened? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but..." "Mom, Grandma's alive." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Then, what did you just say?" I told her everything: the recycling center, the medical waste, the discovery at Grandma's house. By the time I finished, I could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line. "I'm on my way," she managed. 20 minutes. It was actually 17 minutes before she burst through the emergency department doors, my stepfather Mark close behind her. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair disheveled as if she'd literally run out of the house mid-activity. When she saw me, she pulled me into a fierce hug. "Where is she? Can we see her? They're still running tests. A doctor should be out soon." We'd barely settled into the waiting area when Detective Carver arrived, a tall woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and an air of competent authority. She introduced herself and produced a badge, then guided us to a more private consultation room. "I need to ask you all some questions about Dennis Hartwell," she began, pulling out a tablet. "But first, let me update you on what we know. We've been tracking Mr. Hartwell for 3 weeks as part of a multi-agency investigation into prescription fraud. What we didn't know was that his mother was alive and being kept in these conditions." "What conditions?" my mother demanded, her voice sharp with fear and anger. "What did he do to her?" Detective Carver's expression softened slightly. "From what we can determine, he's been keeping her isolated and dependent. The medications we found at the house are real, legally obtained through fraudulent prescriptions written in her name. He's been maintaining her in a semi-sedated state, enough to keep her compliant but not enough to cause immediate medical crisis." "Why?" I asked. "What was the point of all this?" "Medicare payments. Prescription kickbacks. Life insurance policies that he'd taken out in her name. We're still unraveling the full extent of the fraud, but preliminary estimates suggest he's stolen upwards of $200,000 over the past 8 months. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. Mark put his arm around her shoulders, his own face pale with shock. "The funeral," Detective Carver continued, consulting her tablet. "That was an elaborate cover. He filed a false death certificate, held a cremation service with an empty casket, and collected on a $50,000 life insurance policy. He's been living off that money while continuing to collect her Medicare benefits and forging prescriptions in her name." "But people saw her," I protested, trying to make sense of it. "Neighbors, friends. How did no one notice? Your grandmother has been a recluse since her hip surgery last summer. Mr. Hartwell systematically isolated her, telling neighbors she was recovering and didn't want visitors. He handled her mail, her phone calls, everything. By the time he staged her death, she'd already been invisible for months." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Every excuse, every explanation that had seemed reasonable at the time, revealed itself as part of a calculated plan. Uncle Dennis hadn't just stolen money, he'd stolen Grandma's life, her autonomy, her connection to the world. "Where is he now?" Mark asked, the first words he'd spoken since arriving. "We don't know. He hasn't used his credit card since Tuesday, hasn't accessed his bank accounts, hasn't been to his apartment. We have alerts at all airports, train stations, and border crossings. His vehicle is registered in the system. But as of right now, he's in the wind." A nurse appeared at the door, interrupting the conversation. "Family for Lillian Hartwell?" We all stood at once. "How is she?" my mother asked, her voice breaking. "Stable. Dehydrated and malnourished, as expected, but responding well to treatment. The doctor would like to speak with you. Follow me, please. Dr. Patel, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, met us outside Grandma's room in the ICU. He held a tablet displaying what looked like test results and scans. Mrs. Hartwell is going to recover, he began, and I felt the tension in my shoulders release slightly. However, she's going to need significant support. Beyond the physical neglect, there are signs of psychological trauma. She's been isolated, manipulated, and kept in a state of fear and dependence. We're bringing in a psychiatrist to evaluate her, and I strongly recommend counseling once she's physically stable. Can we see her? My mother asked. Yes, but keep the visit brief. She needs rest. He paused, choosing his words carefully. She's asking for Dennis. She doesn't seem to fully understand that he's responsible for her situation. This is common in abuse cases. The victim maintains loyalty to the abuser. Please don't push her on this topic right now. Let the therapist handle it. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Grandma looked even smaller in the hospital bed, dwarfed by white sheets and medical equipment. But there was color in her cheeks now, and the oxygen mask had been replaced with a nasal cannula. Her eyes were closed, but they fluttered open when my mother approached. Mom, my mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. Oh, Mom. Sarah? Grandma's voice was stronger now, clearer. Is that really you? It's me. I'm here. We're all here. I hung back, letting my mother have this moment. Watching them, I felt the full weight of what had almost been lost. If I hadn't taken those boxes to the recycling center, if Roy hadn't opened them, if the supervisor hadn't made those calls, Grandma might have died in that dark room, alone and believing everyone had abandoned her. Over the next hour, we took turns sitting with her, keeping the conversation light and reassuring. She drifted in and out of sleep, the exhaustion of months of inadequate care finally catching up with her. Each time she woke, she seemed a little more oriented, a little more present. It was during one of these wakeful periods that she asked the question we'd been dreading, "Where's Dennis? Does he know I'm here?" My mother and I exchanged glances. Don't worry about Dennis right now, Mom. Just focus on getting better. But he'll be worried. He takes care of everything. I need to. Mrs. Hartwell, Detective Carver said gently, stepping into the room. She'd been waiting in the hallway, giving us family time. I need to talk to you about your nephew. Are you feeling up to answering some questions? Grandma's face crumpled with confusion and fear. Did something happen to Dennis? Is he all right? He's fine, as far as we know. But I need you to think carefully about something. When did you last leave your house? The question seemed to stump her. She looked around at all of us, her eyes seeking an answer we couldn't provide. I don't remember. After the surgery, Dennis said I needed to rest. He said the doctors wanted me to stay in bed until I was stronger. What surgery, Grandma? I asked gently. My hip. Last summer? Or was it fall? She pressed her fingers to her temples, frustration mounting. I can't remember. Dennis handles the calendar. He tells me what day it is. Detective Carver made a note on her tablet. Did Dennis ever prevent you from making phone calls or having visitors? No, he. She paused, uncertainty crossing her features. He said I needed to focus on healing. That too much stimulation would slow my recovery. He said the doctors recommended isolation. Did you ever speak to these doctors yourself? Dennis went to my appointments for me. He said I was too weak to travel. The picture became clearer with each answer. Dennis had constructed a prison of concern, using medical authority and family duty as bars. Grandma hadn't been physically restrained, she'd been psychologically manipulated into believing her confinement was for her own good. Mrs. Hartwell, Detective Carver continued, her voice patient and kind, did Dennis ever ask you to sign documents? Papers related to insurance, or your house, or medical care? Grandma's hand moved to her throat, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. Sometimes. He said it was just routine paperwork. Bills, mostly. He's always handled my finances. Did you read what you were signing? My eyes aren't what they used to be. Dennis would explain what everything was. He's a good boy. He wouldn't. Her voice trailed off as she looked at each of our faces, reading the truth we were trying so hard to protect her from. What did he do? My mother took her hand. Mom, Dennis has been lying to you. About a lot of things. The doctors never said you couldn't have visitors. They never said you had to stay isolated. But he said. He lied, Grandma, I said, unable to keep the anger from my voice. He told everyone you were dead. He held a funeral. He's been stealing from you. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Grandma's face went through a rapid succession of emotions: disbelief, confusion, dawning horror, and finally, a deep, bone-aching sadness. Why, she whispered. Why would he do that? Nobody had a good answer. Detective Carver tried to explain about the gambling debts, the fraud investigation, the systematic manipulation. But how do you explain to someone that the person they trusted most in the world had betrayed them so completely? Grandma turned her face to the wall and wept. The next few days passed in a strange blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and legal consultations. My mother took leave from work to coordinate Grandma's care. I became the unofficial liaison between the family and the investigation, answering Detective Carver's questions and providing documentation, old photos of Uncle Dennis, access to family group chats, anything that might help track him down. Grandma's physical health improved rapidly once she received proper nutrition and hydration. The doctors were amazed at her resilience. But the psychological damage was harder to quantify. She barely spoke, responding to questions with single words or simple nods. The psychiatrist, Dr. Chen, explained that this was normal. She was processing a profound betrayal while simultaneously confronting the reality of how much time had been stolen from her. On the fourth day, I was sitting in Grandma's room while she napped when my phone rang. Detective Carver's name flashed on the screen. We found him, she said without preamble. Dennis Hartwell was apprehended at a bus station in Cincinnati. He's being extradited back here. We'll need you and your mother to come to the station tomorrow for formal statements. I looked at Grandma's sleeping form, so peaceful in this moment. Does she need to know right away? That's up to you and your family. But she'll need to know eventually. He's going to be charged with elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, and a host of other crimes. This is going to be a very public trial. After hanging up, I sat with that information for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell Grandma immediately, to give her the closure of knowing he'd been caught. But another part wanted to let her have just a few more hours of peace before the next phase of this nightmare began. My mother made the decision for us when she arrived that evening. She pulled me into the hallway and told me she'd already heard from Detective Carver. Together, we decided to wait until Grandma was moved out of ICU and into a regular room. Dr. Patel had said that would probably happen tomorrow if her numbers continued to improve. That night, I went home to my apartment for the first time in days. The place felt different somehow, smaller and less substantial. I stood in my living room, looking around at the ordinary artifacts of my life: the couch I'd found at a garage sale, the bookshelves packed with paperbacks, the framed photos on the wall. One photo caught my eye: Uncle Dennis and me at my college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. He'd driven 8 hours to be there, brought me flowers and taken me to dinner. How could that person be the same one who'd imprisoned his own mother in a dark room? I took the photo down and turned it face down on the shelf. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, not yet, but I didn't want to look at it either. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept replaying moments from the past year, searching for signs I'd missed. Had there been clues? Warning signals that I'd ignored because he was family, because I trusted him, because I couldn't imagine someone I loved being capable of such cruelty? The next morning, I arrived at the hospital to find Grandma sitting up in bed, a breakfast tray in front of her. She was eating scrambled eggs slowly, methodically, as if relearning the process. When she saw me, she offered a small smile. "Good morning, sweetheart." "Morning, Grandma. How are you feeling?" "Better. Dr. Patel says I can move to a regular room today. Maybe even go home in a few days." She paused, setting down her fork. "If I still have a home to go to." "Of course you do. The house is yours. No one can take it from you." "But Dennis said," she stopped herself, shaking her head. "I have to stop doing that, don't I? Stop believing what Dennis said." I pulled a chair close to the bed and took her hand. "Grandma, there's something we need to tell you." "About Dennis?" I saw fear flash in her eyes, quickly suppressed. "He's dead, isn't he? Something happened and that's why he hasn't come." "No, he's alive." "But, they found him." "The police." "He was arrested yesterday in Cincinnati." She absorbed this information silently, her fingers tightening around mine. "So it's all true then? Everything you told me? He really did all those things?" "Yes." "Did he ever love me? Or was I just a means to an end?" The question broke my heart. "I don't know, Grandma. I'd like to think that somewhere, buried under all the lies and manipulation, there was real love. But what he did, love doesn't do that. Love doesn't imprison. Love doesn't steal." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her half-eaten breakfast. "I want to see him," she finally said. "Grandma, I don't think that's a good idea. I need to see him. I need to hear him explain why. I need." Her voice broke. "I need to understand." My mother, who'd arrived during this conversation, exchanged a worried look with me. "Mom, maybe later, when you're stronger." "No. Now. Before I lose my courage." Grandma's voice was firm, stronger than I'd heard it in days. "I've spent months in the dark, believing lies. I won't spend another day afraid to face the truth." Detective Carver arranged it for 2 days later, once Grandma had been moved to a regular room and was deemed well enough for the emotional stress. The meeting would take place at the police station, in a monitored room, with officers present. Uncle Dennis had already been arraigned and was being held without bail. I wasn't sure I wanted to be there, but Grandma asked me to come. "I need you there," she said. "Both of you." She meant my mother too. The police station was a stark, institutional building that smelled of coffee and floor cleaner. Detective Carver met us at the entrance and guided us through security, explaining the protocols. We'd be in a room separated from Dennis by reinforced glass. There would be phones to talk through. He'd be restrained, though Carver assured us it was just procedure. "You can end this at any time," she reminded Grandma. "Just say the word and we'll stop." Grandma nodded, her face pale but determined. She'd insisted on dressing nicely for this, a lavender blouse and slacks that my mother had brought from her house, a string of pearls that had belonged to her own mother. She'd done her hair, put on lipstick. Armor, I realized. She was putting on armor for this confrontation. The room was smaller than I expected, with 2 chairs on our side of the glass and one on his. We waited in tense silence until a door opened on the other side and Uncle Dennis was let in. I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt and shadowed with stubble. His hands were cuffed, his shoulders slumped. But what shocked me most was the expression in his eyes when he saw Grandma, not defiance or anger, but something that looked almost like relief. He picked up the phone on his side. Grandma stared at hers for a long moment before finally lifting it to her ear. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Why?" The single word was all she could manage. He closed his eyes, pain etched across his features. "It started small. Just a few prescriptions, to help with the gambling debts. I told myself I'd pay it back, that it wasn't really hurting anyone. But it spiraled. I owed dangerous people money, Mom. They were threatening me, threatening to hurt Sarah, to hurt. He glanced at me, then away. I panicked. So you decided to kill me? Grandma's voice was steady, but I could see her hand shaking. No. I never wanted to hurt you. I just needed time, needed to figure out how to fix everything. The fake death certificate was supposed to give me breathing room, access to the life insurance so I could pay off the debts and disappear. You weren't supposed to be part of it. You were supposed to go to a nice care facility while I sorted everything out. Then why didn't I? She demanded, anger finally breaking through. Why did you keep me locked in that room? Because you got sick. The infection after your surgery, it was worse than the doctors thought. You needed round-the-clock care, and I couldn't. I couldn't afford the facility anymore. I'd already spent the insurance money. So I thought, just for a few weeks, I'll take care of you at home. Just until I could figure something else out. A few weeks turned into months. I know. I know. He pressed his free hand against the glass, a gesture that might have been reaching for her. Every day I told myself I'd fix it tomorrow. I'd tell the truth tomorrow. But the lies kept getting bigger, and I was in too deep. I didn't know how to stop. My mother leaned forward, her voice cold. You held a funeral, Dennis. You made us mourn her. Do you have any idea what that did to us? I'm sorry, Sarah. I never meant. You never meant? You took our mother from us. You stole months of her life, months we could have spent together. For what? Money? Gambling debts? It wasn't just the money, he said quietly. It was the shame. I couldn't face you all, couldn't admit what I'd done. The lie became easier than the truth. Grandma set down the phone for a moment, composing herself. When she picked it back up, her voice was different, not angry, but unutterably sad. I loved you, Dennis. I would have helped you. If you'd just told me the truth, asked for help, I would have given you everything I had. I know, Mom. That's what makes this so much worse. You would have helped, and instead I. He couldn't finish the sentence. Why keep me sedated? Why keep me in the dark? Because I was afraid you'd try to leave. Try to call for help. I couldn't let anyone know you were alive, not until I figured out how to fix it. He laughed bitterly. As if there was any way to fix something like this. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession settling over us. I wanted to rage at him, to scream about the betrayal and the cruelty. But looking at Grandma's face, I saw something I didn't expect, pity. You destroyed your life, she said softly. For nothing. You threw away everything, your freedom, your family, your future, because you were too proud to ask for help. I know. And now you're going to prison. I know. She studied his face through the glass, this man who was her son's son, who she'd helped raise after his father died, who'd been at every family gathering and holiday. I forgive you, she said finally. His head snapped up, disbelief written across his features. What? I forgive you. Not because what you did was forgivable, but because I won't let what you did turn me into someone who carries hatred. You stole months from me, Dennis. I won't let you steal my peace too. Tears streamed down his face. I don't deserve that. No, you don't. But I'm not giving it for your sake. I'm giving it for mine. She stood, her hand still holding the phone. Goodbye, Dennis. Mom, wait. But she'd already hung up the phone and turned toward the door. My mother and I followed, leaving him staring after us through the glass, alone with his choices. 3 months later, Grandma moved back into her house on Hillside Drive. We'd spent weeks cleaning it out, erasing the traces of what had happened in that back bedroom. The hospital bed was gone, the medical equipment removed. We'd painted the walls a cheerful yellow, installed new curtains that let in floods of natural light, and filled the room with plants and photographs. Grandma refused to sell the house, despite several well-meaning suggestions from family members. This is my home, she said firmly. I won't let what Dennis did take that from me too. She'd made remarkable progress, both physically and emotionally. Physical therapy had her walking without assistance. The malnutrition had been addressed. And while she still saw Dr. Chin weekly, she was sleeping better, smiling more, engaging with life again. The trial was scheduled for the fall. Uncle Dennis had pleaded guilty to all charges, sparing Grandma the ordeal of testifying. His lawyer had negotiated a sentence of 12 to 15 years. Grandma had written a letter to the judge, advocating for treatment programs rather than just punishment. "He's sick," she'd told me. "Addiction, whether it's to gambling or lies, is an illness. Locking him away won't heal anyone." I still struggled with her forgiveness. Part of me wanted justice that looked like vengeance, wanted him to suffer as she had suffered. But watching Grandma thrive, hosting Sunday dinners again, tending her garden, volunteering at the library, I began to understand. Her forgiveness wasn't about Dennis. It was about reclaiming her own life, refusing to let his actions define her future. On a warm June afternoon, I found her in the garden, planting tomatoes. She looked up as I approached, shading her eyes against the sun. "Help an old woman with these stakes?" she asked, gesturing to a pile of bamboo poles. I knelt beside her in the dirt, breathing in the smell of fresh earth and growing things. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence only possible between people who've weathered storms together. "I've been thinking," she said eventually, patting soil around a seedling, "about starting a support group. For other elderly people who've been taken advantage of by family members. There are so many, you know. More than you'd think." "That's a wonderful idea, Grandma. Dr. Chen thinks it might help. Talking to others who understand. And maybe I can help them too. Show them that life goes on, that you can survive something like this." She sat back on her heels, surveying the neat rows of plants. "These will give us tomatoes in a few months. Something to look forward to." "Something to look forward to," I echoed, understanding the deeper meaning. Grandma was planting more than vegetables, she was planting hope, cultivating a future that Dennis's actions hadn't destroyed. That evening, my mother joined us for dinner. We sat around Grandma's kitchen table, the one that had hosted countless family meals over the decades, and ate pot roast with fresh bread. Conversation flowed easily, touching on ordinary things, the weather, neighborhood gossip, plans for the 4th of July. It wasn't until we were clearing dishes that my mother paused, a plate in her hands, and said, "Mom, I want you to know how proud I am of you. What you've been through, how you've handled it, you're the strongest person I know." Grandma waved off the compliment, but I could see the pleasure in her eyes. Strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. Sometimes that's all we can do, stand up, brush ourselves off, and keep going. Later, as I was preparing to leave, Grandma pulled me aside. "I want to show you something." She led me to the back bedroom, the one that had been her prison. In the months since we'd renovated it, she'd transformed it into something new, a craft room, filled with yarn and fabric, a sewing machine in the corner, shelves lined with supplies. "This is where it happened," she said, running her hand along a table covered in half-finished quilts. "This is where he kept me. And now it's where I create." I took the space back. I took my life back. I hugged her, feeling the strength in her thin frame. "I'm so glad we found you in time." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." She pulled back, looking at me seriously. "You saved my life that day. You and your stubbornness about recycling properly." I laughed, remembering Roy and his oversized safety vest, the box of medical waste that had started this whole nightmare unraveling. "I guess there's a lesson in there about following proper disposal protocols." "The lesson," Grandma said, "is that truth always finds a way out." Dennis thought he could bury what he'd done, but truth is persistent. It surfaces, one way or another. As I drove home that night, I thought about truth and lies, about betrayal and forgiveness, about the complicated nature of family. Uncle Dennis would spend the next decade or more in prison, paying for what he'd done. But Grandma had already moved on, refusing to be defined by her trauma. The next Sunday, true to her word, Grandma held the first meeting of her support group. 7 people showed up, elderly men and women who'd been financially exploited, isolated, or abused by family members. They sat in her living room, sharing stories and tears and tentative hope. I sat in the back, watching Grandma facilitate the discussion with a gentle authority born of experience. She wasn't just surviving what had happened to her, she was transforming it, using her pain to help others heal. The hardest part, an elderly man named Frank was saying, is the guilt. I keep thinking I should have known, should have seen it coming. But that's what they count on, Grandma responded. Our love, our trust. They exploit the best parts of us. That's not our fault. After the meeting, as people filed out, several stopped to thank Grandma personally. One woman, tears in her eyes, clasped Grandma's hands and said, "You've given me hope. I thought I'd never feel normal again." "You will," Grandma assured her. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will. Healing takes time, but it happens. I'm proof of that." Later that week, I met with Detective Carver for coffee. The case against Uncle Dennis was closed, but she'd asked to speak with me about something else. "The investigation uncovered something we thought you should know," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "Dennis had been planning this for almost a year. We found journals, spreadsheets, detailed plans. This wasn't a panicked reaction to debt, it was calculated." I opened the folder, seeing pages of handwritten notes in Uncle Dennis's familiar scrawl. Plans for the fake funeral. Calculations of Medicare payout schedules. Even notes on how to keep Grandma compliant and isolated. "I thought you should know," Carver continued, "because of your grandmother's support group. This level of planning is more common than people think. Family financial abuse often involves months or years of grooming and preparation. You think there are others like Grandma out there right now? I know there are. Statistically, elder financial abuse is one of the most underreported crimes. Many victims never come forward because they're ashamed or because they still love the person who abused them." I closed the folder, my mind racing. What if we expanded the support group? Made it official, maybe partnered with social services? I think that's an excellent idea. In fact, I'd be happy to help. We could do educational sessions, help people recognize the warning signs. Over the next few months, what had started as a small gathering in Grandma's living room grew into something larger. We found a community center willing to donate space. Detective Carver and Dr. Chen volunteered their time to give presentations. Local news did a story on the group, and suddenly we were getting calls from all over the county. Grandma became the face of elder abuse awareness, sharing her story at conferences and community events. She was unflinchingly honest about what had happened, refusing to sugarcoat the horror of it. But she always ended with the same message: survival is possible, healing is possible, and forgiveness, when you're ready, can set you free. Not everyone agreed with her stance on forgiveness. Some support group members felt that forgiving their abusers would somehow minimize what had been done to them. Grandma never pushed, never judged. "Forgiveness is personal," she would say. "It's not about the other person deserving it. It's about whether you need it for your own peace." Some people find healing through forgiveness, others through justice, still others through simply moving forward. None of those paths is wrong. On the anniversary of my discovery at the recycling center, Grandma organized a celebration at her house. Not a celebration of what had happened, but of what we'd built from it. The support group had helped over 50 people. Several members had successfully prosecuted their abusers. Others had simply found community and understanding. We gathered in Grandma's backyard, now lush with summer growth. The tomato plants she'd planted in June were heavy with fruit. Flowers bloomed in riot along the fence. People laughed and talked, sharing food and stories. I found Grandma standing near her garden, looking peaceful in the golden late afternoon light. "This is beautiful, Grandma. What you've created here." "We've created," she corrected. "This wouldn't exist without you. Without Roy at the recycling center. Without Detective Carver and Dr. Chen and everyone who helped. It takes a community to heal someone. It takes a community to prevent it from happening again. Do you ever regret it? Forgiving him? She considered the question carefully. No. But forgiveness isn't forgetting, and it's not excusing. Dennis will spend years in prison for what he did, and that's appropriate. But I won't spend those years nursing hatred. Life is too precious for that. As the sun set and guests began to leave, I helped Grandma clean up. We moved through her house, this space that had witnessed both horror and healing, putting away chairs and washing dishes. The back bedroom, her former prison, was now where people left their coats, completely reclaimed and repurposed. I'm thinking of writing a book, Grandma said suddenly, drying a plate. About the experience. About recovery. Dr. Chen thinks it might help people who can't come to the support groups. I think that's a wonderful idea. Would you help me? You always were good with words. Of course, Grandma. I'd be honored. We started working on the book the next week. Sitting at her kitchen table with coffee and notebooks, Grandma shared details she'd never told anyone else. The fear she'd felt in that dark room, the confusion when reality and Dennis's lies became impossible to separate, the moment she'd heard my voice and realized rescue had come. I want people to understand, she said, that this can happen to anyone. I wasn't senile or helpless. I was a strong, independent woman, and I still fell victim to manipulation. Because that's what abusers do, they find vulnerabilities and exploit them. The book took 9 months to complete. We worked through memories that made Grandma cry, through anger and grief, and slowly, through hope. We included chapters on recognizing warning signs, on resources for victims, on the legal process. Detective Carver contributed a section on reporting abuse. Dr. Chen wrote about the psychological recovery process. But the heart of the book was Grandma's story, told in her own words, unflinching and honest. She didn't portray herself as a helpless victim or a triumphant hero, but as a human being who'd survived something terrible and chosen to move forward. The publisher we found was a small press that specialized in advocacy books. They believed in the project immediately. This is important, the editor told us. People need to hear this story. The book released in March, exactly 2 years after my discovery at the recycling center. We held a launch event at the local library, with proceeds benefiting the support group. Over 100 people attended, group members, supporters, local officials, and people who'd simply heard about the book and wanted to understand. Grandma read from the final chapter, her voice steady and clear. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in these pages, if you're isolated, controlled, manipulated by someone you love, please know that it's not your fault. You are not weak or stupid or deserving of this treatment. You are worthy of dignity, respect, and autonomy. And there is help available. You don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to believe the lies. And if you're reading this because you've already escaped, because you're in the process of healing, know that you are stronger than you think. The road ahead won't always be easy. There will be days when the trauma feels overwhelming, when forgiveness feels impossible, when you wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. But you will. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will heal. You will find joy again. You will reclaim your life. I speak from experience. 2 years ago, I was trapped in a nightmare created by someone I loved and trusted. Today, I'm standing in a library, surrounded by people who care, sharing my story so that others might find hope in it. That's not just survival, that's transformation. And it's possible for you too. The path from victim to survivor to advocate is not linear. There will be setbacks and struggles. But every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Every day you choose healing is an act of defiance against those who tried to destroy you. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not beyond help. Reach out. Speak up. Let the light in. And remember, truth always finds a way out. The room erupted in applause. I watched Grandma from my seat in the front row, this remarkable woman who'd transformed her trauma into purpose, and felt an overwhelming sense of pride and love. After the event, as we were packing up books and signing thank you cards, a young woman approached Grandma hesitantly. She looked to be in her 30s, with nervous eyes and a death grip on her purse. "Mrs. Hartwell? I'm Emily. I read your book. It's lovely to meet you, Emily. My mother lives with my brother. He handles all her finances, her medical care. She's not allowed to have visitors without him present. I've been worried, but she says he's just being protective." Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your book made me realize that's not normal. That's not okay." Grandma took Emily's hand. "No, it's not okay. And I'm so glad you're recognizing that now, before it goes too far. Have you talked to your mother about your concerns?" She defends him. Says I'm overreacting. That's common. The manipulation makes victims doubt their own judgment. Grandma pulled out a card for the support group. "Come to our next meeting. Even if your mother isn't ready to admit there's a problem, you can get support and resources. We can help you figure out the next steps." Emily took the card with shaking hands. "Thank you. Thank you so much." After she left, Grandma turned to me with tears in her eyes. "That's why we did this. For people like Emily, who are seeing the warning signs and don't know what to do. If this book helps even one family avoid what we went through, it will have been worth it." As the years passed, the impact of Grandma's advocacy grew. The support group expanded to multiple locations throughout the state. The book was adopted by social work programs and elder care facilities as a training resource. Grandma testified before the state legislature, advocating for stronger protections for elderly people and harsher penalties for financial exploitation. And through it all, she continued to heal. She traveled, something Uncle Dennis had told her she was too frail to do. She took art classes, learned to paint watercolors. She dated a kind man named Harold who she met at a community center dance. She lived. Uncle Dennis remained in prison. Grandma visited him once a year, maintaining a connection that many people didn't understand. "He's still family," she explained when questioned. "What he did was unforgivable, but that doesn't mean I have to cut him out of my heart completely. I can forgive and still maintain boundaries. I can wish him well and still protect myself." Their visits were brief and superficial, talking about books they'd read, changes in the neighborhood, carefully avoiding the past. Grandma didn't visit to give Dennis absolution or to rekindle their relationship. She visited because it was part of her healing process, her way of maintaining her own humanity in the face of inhumanity. 5 years after the recycling center incident, I stood in Grandma's backyard at her 80th birthday party. The yard was packed with people, family, friends, support group members, advocates from across the state. A banner reading, "Happy 80th Birthday, Lillian," hung between 2 trees. Grandma moved through the crowd like a queen, hugging people, laughing at stories, fully present in her life. When it came time to blow out the candles on her cake, she paused and looked around at all the faces surrounding her. "I'm not going to make a speech," she announced, to general laughter. "But I do want to say one thing. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything, my freedom, my dignity, my future. Today, surrounded by all of you, I realize that what I actually lost was just the weight I'd been carrying. Everything else, the important things, I found again. Thank you for being part of that journey." She blew out the candles, and the party continued around her. I caught her eye across the crowd, and she smiled at me, a real, genuine smile that reached all the way to her eyes. A smile that said, "I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I'm alive." And she was. Against all odds, despite everything that had been done to her, Grandma had reclaimed her life. She'd taken the darkest chapter of her existence and transformed it into light for others. She'd faced her abuser with courage and her future with hope. If there was a perfect ending to this story, it was this: Grandma standing in her garden, surrounded by love, fully herself again. Not unchanged by what had happened, change was inevitable, but not destroyed by it either. She'd survived, she'd healed, and she'd helped countless others do the same. Sometimes, I still thought about that day at the recycling center. About Roy opening that box, about the chain of events that had followed. About how close we'd come to never finding her, to losing her in that dark room where Uncle Dennis had hidden her away. But then I'd see Grandma, laughing with friends, tending her garden, speaking at conferences, living her life with intention and joy, and I'd realize that what had seemed like the end was actually a beginning. A terrible, traumatic beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. The truth had found its way out. Justice had been served. And most importantly, Grandma had found her way back to herself. That, in the end, was the perfect ending, not the absence of trauma, but the triumph of the human spirit over it. Not the erasure of pain, but the transformation of it into purpose. Grandma had been broken, yes. But she'd put herself back together, and in the process, had helped others do the same. She'd taken the fragments of her shattered life and created something beautiful, a mosaic of resilience, hope, and unconditional strength. As I watched her cut her birthday cake, surrounded by the community she'd built from the ashes of her trauma, I understood that this was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not painless, but real and powerful and absolutely, undeniably triumphant. The nightmare was over. The new chapter had begun. And Grandma, beautiful, strong, forgiving Grandma, was finally, completely, perfectly free.